Welcome back to the fictional continent of Paleothalassia. Where we last left off regarding the history of Paleothalassia, it had split from the supercontinent of Gondwana in the late Devonian. About 50 million years later, Paleothalassia would find itself completely separate and adrift in the Panthalassic Ocean. It's at this time, that being the Moscovian age of the Carboniferous, that the first major fossil-bearing formations of the continent would appear. There are 5 formations known from this time, all of which preserve numerous environments within. These formations are from slightly different times to each other, but all do date to the latter half of the Moscovian. The first formation needed to be discussed is the White Cliff Formation, which preserves the existence of an extensive Rugose reef community in what was northern Paleothalassia. This formation also shows evidence of a carbonate platform, with the reef and the platform continuously growing and receding over the course of their existence. This also results in the two environments sharing quite a lot of different taxa. So, let's explore. Scuttling across an underwater cliff face is an organism not found in any modern-day sea. It resembles a crustacean, but is notably different. It is a trilobite, specifically one in the order Protidae, known as Planocorpus occultio. Its body is very flat, perfect for squeezing into crevices. They are, however, not in a crevice, as this individual was recently ousted from its favorite hole by another Planocorpus. So now they must search for a new one. Typically, they'd hide during the day, but for this individual, that's just not an option. So the Planocorpus starts to crawl its way up, passing over crevice after crevice. Most of these would have been perfect, if not for the current residents, even more Planocorpus. One hole seems vacant of Planocorpus. So, the wandering trilobite goes in. They adjust themselves, sliding in the crevice, only to suddenly be stopped, bumping into something much softer than the rock they'd expect. It was a large Phenatosquilla phonius, eating what could only be the prior resident. The mantis shrimp let go of its feast in a startled jolt, immediately going into a defensive stance. Our Planocorpus immediately retreats, chased out by the shrimp. If the Phanatosquilla phonius wanted to, it could easily catch the Planocorpus. But it already had a meal, so once the trilobite exited, it returned to its food. The trilobite, again being forced out of a potential home, goes on the move. Continuing upwards, they are met with a group of small arthropods swimming around a bed of crinoids. These are Scalutiocarus abyssus, a predator of small fauna, targeting animals even equal to their size, which would include Planocorpus. Usually, this Planocorpus would be worried, but luckily for the individual, they are distracted, as the Scalutiocarus are engaged in brawls. To a human, these would seem barely an event, but for the Scalutiocarus, this is life and death. The losers of this fight will not be able to acquire a mate and will certainly perish before having another chance. Jetting across the water towards the battle and our Planocorpus is one of the most common animals in the formation, Ligurus paleothalassiensis. They are quite intelligent and social, with them usually being found in large groups, holding hands with each other while they filter plankton out of the water column. But he is alone. He jetted over from his group after a shimmer in the water caught his eye. This was the brawl of the Paleothalassia. He rights himself and starts to watch. The small arthropods pay him no mind. The Rugose is mostly curious as to what's occurring, so he doesn't try to interfere. Suddenly, from below rises a huge fish, Paleopictus maculatus. The Rugose retracts into their shell, and the Paleothalassia retreat into the crinoids. Our little Planocorpus rolls up into a ball and falls into the water column. The titanic fish is 3 meters long, not even being a fully grown adult, yet it towers over all of the invertebrates it scared. It is targeting the Rugose, trying to grasp around its shell and swallow it whole. The cephalopod jets out of reach and continues retracting to avoid its tentacles being grabbed by the suction of the Paleopictus's jaws. Amidst the chaos, the Planocorpus ball is flacked by the tail of the gigantic fish, launching it upwards and away from the fight. The Trilobite then uncurls in order to right itself as it falls, softly landing on the surface platform of the Rugose Reef. Thrashing continues below, but the Trilobite doesn't look, instead scuttling away, never seeing the outcome. This surface section wasn't a place this Planocorpus had ever been. They had much preferred to stay in and around their crevasse, where it was safe. The surface of the Rugose Reef was the complete antithesis of that, especially for an animal this small and low on the food chain. However, the Planocorpus doesn't seem to care, continuing to move forward. This is likely due to the limited intelligence present in trilobites. Around the little trilobite is thin, towering Rugose corals with purple anemone-like arms at the top, swaying in the current. Darting between these corals were more cephalopods, this time the tiny Parvoceras minimus. They watch the Planocorpus as they jet by, not really paying them any mind. Usually, they would hunt small trilobites, such as this, but none was seemingly hungry at the moment. Then brushing past the Planocorpus, stunning it slightly, was another trilobite. This is Gladiaprotus serra. It looks different from the quite basal state of Planocorpus in one aspect: a fairly extended point on the cephalon with serrations along its side. These are used in intraspecific combat, with gladiatorial battles occurring between males, though they would definitely help in protecting them from various predators. The individual that brushed against the Planocorpus was not alone, wandering through the Rugose. These trilobites were trawling the sediment, searching for prey, which would likely include small annelids or other benthic microfauna. Pushing all these organisms aside with a sweep of its tail is a massive fish, at least relative to the Planocorpus and Gladiaprotus. They are doing something similar to the trilobites, grazing on the ground, instead looking for algae rather than animals. This fish is Capupiscus taurus. They have massive bulging heads, which would in males be used to fight over females. Right now, it is solitarily grazing, so its head isn't doing anything other than bumping into coral and trilobites. Speaking of which, our Planocorpus was again knocked away by a swell, but this time it immediately hit substrate and continued on its way, ignoring these other trilobites and the fish to further its dangerous journey for a new home. Crawling along, they see many sights, like numerous more tall Rugose coral patches, the occasional Archaeoacra Paleopalaciensis, pretty standard box jellyfish, and swarms of Phococolupia high above the reef itself. These schools are being hunted by the large stenocanthid Gualiacaris boreanestes and the agile Paleonisciform Circifuria cortes. These two predators are in high abundance around these swarms, eating as much as they can, as these schooling events are only this abundant towards the start of the cooler months, when Phococolupia gather to breed. Occasionally, even non-endemic animals can be seen in the swarms, like the Titanic Edustus, known for its global distribution, though none are seen here. Planocorpus doesn't pay much mind to these events, as they are far beyond its ability to comprehend. Further away now from the Planocorpus, near the edge of the reef, a Trilobite struggles to move, barely passing a sea anemone in the genus Amphogorgon. It is a Spinoprotus, and it is sick, being in this state for quite some time. The large spikes that adorn its carapace, once used for protection, have now become nothing but a detriment, making it harder for it to move. This Spinoprotus's bright blue colors have faded. It is close to death. It moves forward a step before collapsing and curling up. Back with the Planocorpus, it has moved further through the reef, now surrounded on all sides by large, red-armed corals, their tentacles swaying in the currents, eating anything they can reach, including small fish. These corals form dense patches where the only free space to move is between their trunks. The Planocorpus, due to its size, easily moves effortlessly between the coral, unlike the Valentiopristi scopulus following above. This cartilaginous fish has been following the Planocorpus for a small bit now, waiting for an opportunity to eat it. As much like the modern pufferfish, Valentiopristis is durophagus. The Planocorpus is quite aware of the fish following it, and has been making an effort to avoid the open. If the fish really wanted, it could push its way through the coral. But it isn't that desperate, as the stinging barbs of the coral would hurt far more than a single trilobite is worth. The trilobite then sees something. On the other side of a small clearing, a particularly dense section of coral. The Valentiopristi doesn't take notice of this, so the Planocorpus takes its chance, hurriedly sprinting forward into the trunks. This takes the fish by surprise, as it tries to flutter its wing-like fins to speed up and catch it, but it's just too late. The Planocorpus makes it between the dense trunks, and down into a gap between them. It's safe for now, away from the prying jaws of the cartilaginous fish. Back at the edge of the reef, the corpse of the Spinoprotus is still untouched, even after hours, likely due to its heavily spiked appearance. It is now leaking bodily fluids, which have finally attracted something to consume it. Swimming above the surface comes an Ambulopristis scopulus, with his cephalinic claspers angled downwards before he stands them up as he stops. He sinks down to the seafloor and walks a small amount to the corpse, looking at it before swimming away, not trying to eat it. Instead, he swims over to a female in order to try and court her with his claspers. The real consumers slowly crawl over the surrounding rock. They are Gigantoaster paleothalassiensis, a fairly large starfish. They arrive in mass, numbering nearly 20 individuals, swarming over the body as they start to digest it. Only around 5 individuals can fit on the corpse at once, so they just start piling onto each other, pushing past the other starfish in order to eat. As this commotion is happening, something slowly wiggles its way through the rocks. It's another cartilaginous fish, Anguilla carcarius scopulus. It's a predator of small invertebrates, and right now it's being fairly opportunistic. It's larger than the starfish by a considerable amount, but their strengths stop it from easily ripping them away. So it just delicately picks pieces that are visible between the mat of starfish. After a while, it just moves on, unable to get a substantial meal. The starfish stay and continue to feast, with it being likely that by morning, the remnants of the Spinoprotus will be nearly completely gone. Now, as the night rolls in, the Planocorpus has stayed in the crevice between the corals. But they can't stay there forever, as while it allows them to escape the Valetia pristis, other fish in the area could definitely reach it. It is for sure not as secure as the rocky crevice that the Trilobite is actually after. So it walks out onto the side of the coral where more canopy is, rather than the clearing. Now the Planocorpus is again under protection of coral canopy. These corals are the largest of the reef, Lapis corylium, with the moonlight illuminating their blue arms onto the seafloor and the Planocorpus below. Amongst the trunks of the Lapis corylium, the Planocorpus scuttled. The night is a busy time in the reef, with many animals becoming more active. Many smaller fish could be seen swimming above, with the occasional larger shape moving over as well. The Planocorpus just continues to move, eventually reaching a strange shape along the seafloor. It tries to walk over it, only for its cylindrical mass to move. It was a Phocuelanguilla minor, a marine lungfish. During the day, they rest in protective areas, such as this, under the canopy. It seems this one was only just in the process of waking up, the legs of the Trilobite startling it into a sudden burst of speed before it gently drifts down to the ground. The lungfish then walks a few steps before stopping, knowing that the thing that touched it wasn't a real threat. Luckily for the Planocorpus, what would usually be a predator was barely awake, so it was safe to scuttle away further into the canopy. After a few meters, the Planocorpus notices something floating above it. Numerous small shapes glistening in the glow from the coral. These shapes seem barely able to control their own movement, or just leisurely floating along, occasionally moving what seems to be frontal appendages towards their mouth. These are Globosoma puniceus, one of the last radiodonts, a lineage of arthropod that stretches back to the Cambrian. Globosoma puniceus is unlike any radiodont before it, not really being an active swimmer, more being subtle drifters in the current. The Planocorpus and these Globosoma share something special, being members of extremely ancient clades, which have managed to cling on for so long. Neither animal realizes this, however, and the Planocorpus just scuttles away, leaving the Globosoma to continue their feast on plankton. The Trilobite strolls along for hours, still unable to find a crevice suitable. The night continues like this until just before dawn, when the Planocorpus reaches the edge of the coral canopy. At the end of this protection, a steep decline is present, one which is certain to have just what it's after. It leaves the coral and heads down, passing by many holes, though they are just too small for it. Suddenly, a crack. A rock gives way, causing many others around it and the Planocorpus to hastily plummet to the bottom of the ditch. The Trilobite, stunned, sits motionless on its back at the bottom, and a shadow starts looming over it. This shadow grows larger as the creature descends closer. With a twitch of its legs, the Planocorpus wakes, uncertain about its surroundings. But its little compound eyes spot something. The perfect crevice. Just to the right of it, under a rocky overhang. As of this moment, it hasn't noticed the creature descending right towards it. The little Trilobite shifts its weight around, rocking from side to side until it flips right over. Only then does it see it. The tentacled maw of a cephalopod. The creature moving towards it is a Curvoceras ingens, an onocerid nautiloid. Curvoceras is typically a predator of brachiopods, but it wasn't going to pass on this opportunity. Right as the Planocorpus notices it, it lunges down, trying to envelop it in its arms. The Trilobite starts to run, and is just missed. The cephalopod doesn't give up, following it on the sea floor. The Trilobite manages to evade its arms again and again, barely being missed. Not too far away is the crevice, so it just continues forward. Just as it makes it to the entrance of the hole, it stopped. The Curvoceras managed to grab a leg. The cephalopod starts to close in with more arms, but snap! The Trilobite is free. However, with one less leg. It moves further down into the tighter and tighter passage. The prodding arms of the cephalopod unable to follow, soon drifting away. This crevice is spacious enough to fit the Planocorpus perfectly, without any risk of predation, and due to it being at the bottom of a hill, there would be plenty of nutritious food in the sediment, just falling down. It may have taken over a day, but the little Planocorpus finally found a place to call home. The White Cliff Formation of Paleothalassia is particularly notable in the history of Paleothalassian paleontology, being the first official formation written about in scientific literature. It was first published on by renowned paleontologist Sir William Duke, and has been one of the most researched locations in the continent's history. The formation, as prior mentioned, is a limestone deposit, known for its diverse assemblage of life, especially a certain few fossils, which made this formation famous in the Paleosphere. The Rugose Reef of Moscovian Paleothalassia was undoubtedly a diverse ecosystem, being home to all forms of life, with the base of it being those aforementioned rugose corals, notably Aquaphilidia, Lapis coryllium, and Lithoarbus. For some unknown reason, Paleothalassia's rugose corals are considerably more unique and highly endemized compared to the rest of the world. Unlike anywhere else, the dominant forms of rugose corals were solitary, growing as single massive rugoses instead of group congregations of tightly packed coral. Most of the free coral genera from this time still show they seemingly grew in patches of the same species, but none of these coral were actually colonial, having decent spaces between each trunk. The reason behind this may also relate to other odd evolutionary trends found in the waters around Carboniferous Paleothalassia. Alongside the rugose corals were several other small sessile organisms, such as the anemone Anthogorgon and crinoids like Aquifloris vulgaris, present throughout. These sessile organisms, the coral included, represent the most common fossils found in the White Cliff, making up what would be 75% of known organisms. Also present in the reef would have been clades of animals that would be fairly recognizable in modern-day oceans, like the mantis shrimp Venatosquilla phonius, the starfish Gigantoaster paleothalassiensis, and the box jellyfish Archaeoarca paleothalassiensis. These organisms make up a truly unique part of the formation, showing how certain clades have changed very little over 300 million years. Out of these more recognizable animals, Gigantoaster has the highest prevalence in the fossil record, with numerous traces and body fossils being found, including an exceptional preserved assemblage of Gigantoaster seemingly devouring a trilobite. Venatosquilla phonius and Archaeoarca paleothalassiensis, on the other hand, are rarely found, likely due to their lifestyle and body types, with only one fossil of each being found, though Archaeoarca's sole fossil was extraordinarily well preserved, with even the eyes being able to be seen. In the water column, numerous invertebrate groups lost to time could be found, such as multiple Phylocephalalia, with the most prominent in the reef being Scalutiocaris abyssus, which was also the largest of its kind at the time. They are preserved in relative abundance in the rocks, especially in strata that preserve lower oxygenated environments, such as deeper water. Alongside them would have existed multiple cephalopods, such as the filter-feeding goniatite, Liquorhynchus paleothalassiensis, the bizarrely shaped Oniocerid nautiloid Curvoceras ingens, and the tiny pseudo-orthocerid nautiloid Parvoceras minimus. Liquorhynchus is considered an index fossil for Moscovian reef deposits of Paleothalasia, with its presence defining the ecosystem in the rocks. Parvoceras is the next most common in reef deposits, with members usually occurring in two different depositional environments. Lone Parvoceras tend to be found in oxygenated rocks, where massed die-offs of Parvoceras only being found in anoxic conditions. These groupings appear as tangled spiny masses, with the largest assemblage containing up to 50 individuals. It is theorized that they represent mating assemblages, as the only individuals present are adults. Curvoceras ingens is, however, the least common of the Rugose reef cephalopods, with them only being found in the least oxygenated deposits alongside their brachiopod and bivalve prey. Now it is here in the reef that we find the first of a truly marvelous clade, the trilobites. Across the rest of the globe, the trilobites were not as diverse as they once were, being limited to a single order, the protids. This is in no means saying they were destined to extinction, as this order was steadily diversifying again after the Devonian mass extinction. But it was certainly nowhere near the level of diversity that they had once experienced earlier in the Paleozoic. On Paleothalassia, however, it seems that this ancient arthropod lineage exploded in diversity, having numerous strange forms reminiscent of Ordovician or Cambrian trilobites. Many of these could be found across a variety of ecosystems, with it being clear that there were a great number of these critters crawling about in just the White Cliff Formation alone. On the conservative side of morphology, you could have found Planocorpus occultio, which seems to be a particularly flat organism, likely living in crevices between rocks. Although the original specimen was just thought to be deformed due to taphonomic processes, it was later re-examined, revealing this to not be true. It also appears to be a trilobite genus limited to just the Rugose reefs, likely due to its ecology requiring the tightly packed rocks and corals of that ecosystem. Despite being limited to the reefs, it, like Phenotosquilla, are fairly lacking in fossils due to the exact part where they lived. Another fairly conservative trilobite genus that is present is Vertebrate. In fact, these were the first trilobites discovered in the White Cliff Formation, with fossils being discovered in the first expedition to the region, though they weren't described till much later. They strongly resemble an average member of Protidae, with their most specialized feature being their small body size and very elongated thorax, with it having a large amount of segments, making the members of this genus in a way resemble worms, hence the name. Only one species is frequently found in the White Cliff, that being Verteprotus arcus, though even they are more common elsewhere. Moving to a slightly more derived trilobite, we find Gladiprotus. Their main difference compared to the likes of other Paleothalassian trilobites is fairly obvious: their large protrusions on their cephalon. There is 3 species of Gladiprotus found in Carboniferous rocks of Paleothalassia, with all 3 being present in the White Cliff Formation. These are Gladiprotus serra, Gladiprotus ennis, and Gladiprotus sagitta. And while all of these are present, the most common in reef deposits is Gladiprotus serra. Morphologically, they are also the most strange compared to the others, having serrated growths along their protrusion. There is clear sexual dimorphism in this genus, with individuals that are assumed female having significantly reduced growths. This makes it clear that the large growths were used in sexual selection, with the original describer of the genus theorizing that they used them in combat. This is still the currently believed theory regarding the use of the cephalon protrusions. The strangest trilobites of the reef was certainly the genus Spinoprotus, having a body fully encased in spikes and substantial eye stalks. They are probably the least common trilobite genus in the reef, with it being certain that they are more abundant in the crinoid garden. Out of the 3 members of the genus, only 2 are found somewhat regularly in the reef, those being Spinoprotus smargus and Spinoprotus sapphirus, as they seemingly spend the most time on the sea floor compared to Spinoprotus amorphis, which likely spent most of its time in crinoid canopies. The trilobite diversity here is likely caused by a similar force that resulted in the strange corals. Whatever factor resulted in this strange diversity probably stems from a period around the end Devonian mass extinction, where an as of yet unknown location managed to act as a refugium to numerous species of marine fauna. This refugium would have allowed for a better chance of survival for select clades, much like the similar refugium from the late Permian in the Taodonggu section in Xinjiang, China, which helped a great deal of flora survive, where in other locations they disappeared. This theoretical refugium is likely the way another magnificent clade managed to survive in the waters of Paleothalassia longer than anywhere else: the radiodonts. In the early 2020s, a fossil was found in a fairly unremarkable way. A beachgoer stumbled upon a piece of limestone from the White Cliff Formation and noticed some things, or well, lots of some things. It was taken to the Sir William Duke Institute of Paleontology and was examined. This analysis found something truly remarkable: the body pieces and frontal appendages of a tiny radiodont. Notably, it was the first to be discovered beyond the Devonian. This radiodont was named Globosoma puniceus. Its existence held remarkable implications and caused an influx of scientists to the island continent's Paleozoic formations to see if they could find any more. This search was successful. However, that is not important currently. Globosoma is. Globosoma puniceus, in the layer it was originally found in, is extremely common. This layer of the formation is notable for its more anoxic conditions, with it likely that they managed to survive better than other animals in these conditions. Globosoma is fairly derived compared to other members of Herdiidae, being in a distinctly unique clade compared to other late-surviving radiodonts like Schinderhannes. Its morphology is more similar to members like Cambororasta than others, with it likely diverging from Cambororasta back in the Cambrian. Globosoma and its ancestors likely survived the multiple prior mass extinctions just due to their simple ecology, which just relies on floating through the current and filtering particulates. Their small size likely also helped. The fish present in the Rugose reefs come in a variety of forms as well, with the most common of these being members of the clade Chondrichthyes. The least common clade of these cartilaginous fish are the elasmobranchs, with Gualocarcarius borenestes being the only described species and genus present. They're known from their teeth and their fin spines, though a partial complete skeleton has been found. Other elasmobranchs are known, but only from extremely fragmentary teeth. The most common clade is holocephaly. This seems to be a continuous global trend at the time, with these fish being the most common representative everywhere. The most dominant predator at this time would have been the Eugeniodontids, with members of this order being cosmopolitan in distribution. It appears that this was still apparent in Paleothalassia, with the largest Eugeniodont of the time, Adustus, being found in somewhat frequent quantity in the Whitecliff. Other holocephaly clades present in these reefs include the chondrocelia forms. Ambulopristres scopulus is one of them, and it is a relatively common find in areas of the formation which show a shallow depositional environment. It is likely that their anatomy helped there, allowing them to, in a way, walk on the shallow sea floor, and even potentially between rock pools. Ambulopristres scopulus appears to be fairly close relatives of Harbifutator, sharing similar cephalitic claspers in males. The other conracheliform present is the larger Anguiliocarcharis scopulus. This fish was much smaller in regards to its fins, with it likely being an adaptation for living between densely packed corals and rocks, living somewhat similar to modern moray eels, though being considerably more durophagous. The last clade of holocephaly present is the Iniopterygia forms, with Voletiapristi scopulus being the sole representative. This fish is fairly common in the fossil record, present in many depositional environments of the Whitecliff, though in the individual depositional environments they are less common than other clades. They would have been fairly generalist, much like modern pufferfish. The other major clade of fish present is the Osteichthyes, the bony fish. The least present of these in the reef is certainly Sarcopterygians, with only a single marine lungfish being present in the deposits. This lungfish represents another strange feature in Paleothalassia, that being the longevity of marine lungfish. with the members present in the Carboniferous giving rise to a lineage of lungfish that would remain in the oceans much longer than anywhere else in the world. The members of this clade present in the Rugose Reef is Phocoanguilla minor. This fish is fairly rare in deposits, with only about 5 individuals being found so far. The remaining fish found in the White Cliff Formation are all ray-finned fishes. They hold a variety of niches that the other fish just don't. Notably, the most common fish found in the formation as a whole is Phococolupia. They would have been small schooling fish which can be found in huge quantities in the rocks, with the largest find being a mass die-off which resulted in nearly 1,000 individuals being killed. Notably, this mass die-off included a number of other organisms like corals, bivalves, and other large fish, with it probably being caused by an underwater landslide. Another ray-finned fish present in the reef is Capupiscus taurus. This fish is fairly well known for its ecology, thought to be similar to modern-day parrotfish. They use their specialized teeth to graze algae off the rocks, crushing them in process. This fish is notable as it was one of the first animals described by Sir William Duke, with it causing an internal debate in science, as many people continuously placed it into different clades due to its strangeness, until it was finally placed in Gonatodidae. While some weren't mentioned, the final major fish present in the Rugose Reef is Scoliopictus maculatus. It is by far the most discussed fish from the Carboniferous of Paleothalassia, simply due to its gargantuan size. They are only known from around 2 fragmentary specimens in the reef and a few more on the carbonate platform. This fish has been estimated to be up to 4 meters in length, and would have lived in a niche similar to groupers. They also have a taxonomic mystery behind them, where they were originally placed in various places, and finally, with it being resolved to paleonyctiforms. Surprisingly, their closest relative being the diminutive Phococolupia, an absolutely tiny fish in comparison. So there concludes our look into Paleothalassia's Carboniferous Rugose Reef. Carbonate platform is next. This ecosystem was remarkably strange, and in the end, ended up being the most speciose as well. I'd like to thank all the people involved in the project so far, especially for this video, the people who put stuff into the Rugose Reefs. Hopefully the video for the next ecosystem shouldn't take as long to make. So, hopefully I'll see you soon. Bye.